Legolas was riding along in the woods, and one day he found a baby wrapped in coleth. So he got off his horse and went to the baby, and then Legolas said, "Who left you here, little one?" And then the baby just cried, and then Legolas picked her up and hold her, and then the baby stopped crying, and then Legolas said, "Your name is going to be Laura." And then Legolas and the baby went onto the horse and went back to the castle where he lived. Legolas said, "Father, Mother, I found this little baby in the woods." And then Legolas' mother got up and walked down and said, "How can people put baby in the wood sand to die?" Then Legolas' father said, "We are going to keep her." And then Legolas was happy for summer sizing. 10 years later, Legolas got up and went to Laura's room and said, "Good morning." And then Laura said, "Good morning too." Then Legolas said, "What's the matter?" Then Laura said, "Legolas, I want to know how to ride a horse." Then Legolas said, "Okay." Then Legolas said, "First you get dresses and have something to eat, and then we will go for a horse ride lesson." Meanwhile, Strider and Gandalf was riding towards where Legolas lived, and then Strider said, "Gandalf, I did not know Legolas had a sister." And then Gandalf said, "I did not know as well." Meanwhile, at Mondor, the Dark Lord was planning to kidnap the princess, but not Legolas. Then the boss of the orcs came and said, "I'll get her for you, sir." And then the Dark Lord said, "Yes, you can." Meanwhile, Legolas and Laura was horse riding, and then Laura said, "Legolas, who's that?" And then Legolas looked, and it was Gandalf and Strider. Legolas said, "That is Gandalf and Strider." And then Strider said, "Legolas." And then Legolas said, "Strider, long time seen." And then Strider said, "How's you?" And then Legolas said, "I'm fine." And then Gandalf said, "Who's this then?" And then Legolas said, "Meet Laura. I found her in the woods when she was just a baby." Laura was shy at first, and then Legolas said, "Laura, come and meet Strider and Gandalf." And then Laura said, "Hello, I am Laura." Legolas said, "She is the princess." And then Strider said, "She is so cute." And then Legolas said, "That would be my valet." And then Gandalf said, "Why?" And then Laura said, "He protects me, that's why." And then Legolas looked up and said, "I think we should go back to the castle." And then Laura said, "I can feel it too." Legolas said, "Do you want to stay for a night?" And then Gandalf and Strider said, "Yes, please." And then they had tea and went to bed. During the night, Legolas asked the guards to keep an eye on Laura's room. Meanwhile, the orcs climbed up the window and grabbed Laura, and then Laura woke up and screamed. And then the guard went into her room and saw lots of orcs, and then Legolas ran down the hall. Then Legolas said, "Where is Laura?" And then the guard said, "The orcs took her." Meanwhile, the orcs were back at Mondor, and then Laura said, "Put me down!" And then the orcs did, and then the Dark Lord came out of the fire and said, "Welcome, Laura." And then Laura looked at him and said, "No, it can't be." And then she tried to run away, but the orcs got her. Then the Dark Lord said, "Put her into the cell and bet her, and also do whatever you want with her, but do not kill her." Then the orcs took her to the cell and threw her into the cell, and then they shut the door. Laura go up and went to the window and looked out, and she was wishing that Legolas or someone would save her. Meanwhile, back at the castle of Milkwood, Legolas was getting the army ready to go and save Laura. Meanwhile, Laura was sitting on the floor, and then the door opened, and it was some orcs, and the orcs tied Laura with some chains, and then one of the orcs striped her, and then raped her, and then Laura said, "Go away, you bastard." Then the other orc came with a whip and whipped her hard, and then the orcs all together bet her almost to death. And then the Dark Lord came in with a tube of poison and injected it into Laura. few hours later, Legolas and the others was on the way to Mondor to save the princess, Laura. Meanwhile, in the cell where Laura was being kept, Laura woke up and looked on her body. There was blood and scars, as she could only move her right arm, but not her left. Then Laura said, "I feel so cold." And then she can't see very well. At the front gates of Mondor was Legolas and the others. They said, "Let Laura go." And then the Dark Lord said, "No!" And then Legolas said, "Right, listen. I will climb up to the cell and get Laura, and you and the others will find another way in." Then Strider said, "All right." And then Legolas started to climb up. Meanwhile, Strider and the others ran into Mondor and went to the castle. Gandalf said, "I will go and kill the Dark Lord, and you and the others go help Legolas." Strider said, "Be careful." And then Gandalf said, "I will. Don't you worry about me." Meanwhile, Legolas got to the cell where Laura is. Legolas said, "Laura, are you in there?" And then Laura said, "Oh, Legolas, you finally came." And then Legolas said, "Are you all right?" And then Laura said, "No, I am not all right." And then Legolas said, "They bet you up and raped you. Also, the Dark Lord gave you the Pasoin." And then Laura said, "How did you know that?" And then Legolas said, "When I was your age, they did the same thing to me." Then Laura said, "Can you get me out of here?" And then Legolas said, "Okay, stand back." Then he ran back and ran towards the door and knocked it down. Laura said, "Wow." And then Legolas looked and saw she was covered in blood and scars. Also, she was naked. And then Legolas said, "Why they did it to you and not me?" And then the orcs came in and said, "Because she got a power, she could destroy us all the bad. Then the fight began. Legolas got out his bow and arrows and started firing at them. Then Legolas saw some swords and said, "Strider, is that you?" And then Strider said, "Yes, it is." And then Legolas and the others started to kill the orcs. Meanwhile, Gandalf is having a fun time trying to destroy the Dark Lord. Gandalf said, "I wish Frodo and Merry and Pippin and Sam was here." And then a sword came out of nowhere and said, "Some wished us here." And then Gandalf turned and said, "Oh no." And then the magical powers from Gandalf destroyed the Dark Lord. Meanwhile, Legolas and Strider and the others was helping Laura down, and Strider took off his cape and put it around Laura. Few hours later, Legolas and the others are on the way back to the castle. Legolas said, "We must go to Rivendell and get Laura better." And then Gandalf said, "I think you are right." And then they turned around and went to Rivendell. Legolas looked down on Laura and put his hand onto Laura's head, and she was burning up. Strider went aside of Legolas' horse and looked and said, "She is getting worse." And Legolas said, "I know." Later, again, they were at Rivendell, and Legolas stayed at Laura's side every day until she wakes up. And then Legolas kissed Laura on her lips, and then she moved her arms around Legolas, and then Legolas said, "Are you all right?" And then Laura said, "Yes, I am." And Legolas said, "I'm so happy." And then Laura said, "Do you want to be my boyfriend?" And then Legolas said, "Yes, I will be your boyfriend." And then Laura and Legolas kissed again. Laura said, "What happened to me, Legolas?" And then Legolas said, "You got kidnapped by the orcs, and they raped you, and also bet you almost to death. And then the Dark Lord gave you some Pazian." And then Laura said, "Why, I can only move on arm." And then Legolas said, "Your left arm is broken." Then the door opened and it was Strider. And then Laura said, and then Strider said, "I see you are awake." And then Laura